Let's begin our class on the Surangama Sutra today. The Surangama Sutra, sometimes it's rather quite difficult to understand. I'm not sure if I'll be able to give you a good explanation on the sutra. And when I prepare the lessons in the morning, I also felt that it was confusing. So I'm not sure how well I prepared the class today. Let's see how it goes. The answer past profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of aeons. I now see it, here to receive and uphold it, about to fathom the telegate true meaning, to liberate all beings. Let's generate the supreme bodhicitta. Let us begin our class on the Surangama Sutra. We've already covered on the 5 aggregates, the 6 entrances, and the 12 ayatanas, or the 12 places, and then the 18 dhatus. Currently, we're talking about how the 18 dhatus are simply the wondrous manifestation of the Tathagata. Out of the 18 dhatus, we've already talked about the ear faculty, the sound object, and the ear consciousness. We also covered how the ear, eyes, nose, tongue, and body we talked about that in the 6 entrances, in the 12 ayatanas and the 18 dhatus. But when the Buddha explains it through his wisdom, each of the point of view, each of the perspective is rather quite different. And there is such profundity in the different aspects of explanation. So through our study, I believe many of you felt that the wisdom of the Buddha is indeed very rare and quite wondrous. Each one of us, we're very familiar, since we've been familiarizing ourselves with the ear faculty and the eye faculty, all the ear, eye, nose, tongue, and body. We're very familiar with the function of it. We're very familiar with having all of these. However, we had never really looked into the nature of them, or the wondrous manifestation, the wondrous function of those, or from the aspect of emptiness. Had we ever tried to look for the nature of all of those as being empty? Indeed, we had never really delved into it at all. So when it comes to the study of the Surangama Sutra, it is quite meaningful, especially when we're looking at the 18 dhatus. If we were to refute the 6 consciousness within the 18 dhatus being the 6 objects, 6 faculties, and the 6 consciousness, if we were to refute the existence of the 6 consciousness, then naturally the faculty and the object will collapse. Throughout the process of analyzing the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind consciousness, I think it's quite important for us to look inwardly and observe our consciousness. We should understand that the 6 consciousness themselves, in fact, do not discern. According to the Buddhist logic and Abhidharma, the 6 consciousness, all the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, in fact, there is no discernment. We would be able to make the perception directly. That is called the 5 root consciousness. Including mind consciousness, the 6th direct perception. How do we know if the sound is good or bad? How do we know if something looks beautiful or not? In fact, those would be discerned through our dualistic mind. This is quite important to understand. Some of the great masters, when they make the analysis, they would talk about how the eye consciousness doesn't have any discernment, doesn't have any dualistic thoughts to make the distinguishing aspects. Rather, when it comes to the discernment, it is through our dualistic mind, through our conceptions. What our eyes see, what our ears hear, those would be discerned by the conceptual mind. Those of you who studied Buddhist logic, you should be able to understand. If you want to understand the Surangama Sutra, you need to understand some aspects of the Surangama Sutra, you need to understand some of the Abhidharma and then Buddhist logic, the Madhyamika, including some of the Uttara Tantra Shastra. For those of you who studied those before, it would be easy for you to understand. Also, Surangama Sutra is different than the other sutras. When you look at a sutra such as Agama Sutra or the Prajnaparamita Sutra, sometimes it sounds much easier to understand. I probably shouldn't talk too much about these, otherwise it will take too long for me to complete today's lesson. Let's look at the content today. If we have a little bit more time, then I will go on to make more analysis, because at the end of the class you would probably be a little bit tired, and I would probably be a bit tired, and I don't want to end the class in a hasty way. Now let us look at the sutra. The Buddha said, "Moreover, Ananda, as you understand it, the ear and sound create the condition that produce the ear consciousness." What's that sound? If you do not listen to the Dharma teachings attentively, it would be the best for you not to attend the class in the shrine hall. The Buddha then says that, is this consciousness produced because of the ear, such that the ear is its realm? Or is it produced because of sound, such that sound is its realm? The Buddha then told Ananda, saying that, well, you should understand that the ear faculty and the sound object are the causes and conditions which produce the ear consciousness. But this ear consciousness, is it a product that completely relied on the ear faculty and calls the ear consciousness as a realm, or does it rely on the object to be produced and is part of the realm based on such that the sound is its realm? Consciousness, is it a product of faculty, or is it a product of the object? In the Buddhist logic analysis, we talk about how though that consciousness do need to rely on the object, but simply by relying on the object is not the sound consciousness, and you would not say that it is the sound or the form. Rather, it is called the eye consciousness, the ear consciousness, but it doesn't really say it's the sound consciousness or the form consciousness. It is named as the consciousness to the faculty. They are named based on the faculty. After hearing the sound in the ear, is that ear consciousness is produced by relying on the ear. After listening to the ear consciousness, which does not have any discernment on thinking that this is a good music or that is a bad music, it is without any discernment. The ear consciousness simply receives the sound of music or sound that comes from the radio or from the teaching. And then to further look at the ear faculty and how ear faculty produce ear consciousness. Over here, the Buddha said that, Ananda, suppose the ear consciousness were produced because of the ear. The organ of hearing would have no awareness in the absence of both movement and stillness. The movement and stillness are the two types of dust or particles. One type of particle is of the movement and the other one is of the stillness. Other than that, other than movement or stillness, there is no third possibility. Now, Ananda, you said that the ear consciousness, the sound is produced because of the ear faculty. For that reason, then the organ of hearing would have no awareness in the absence of both movement and stillness. We know that the ear faculty does not have any awareness. The sound that you hear, for that reason, since the faculty itself doesn't have awareness, then the sound at the end doesn't have awareness either. Thus, nothing would be known by it. Since the organ would lack awareness, what would characterize the consciousness? Well, since there is no awareness, then how could the ear faculty has any of the shapes or sound or appearances or character, any kind of characters? If the ear faculty doesn't have awareness, how could the ear consciousness have any characters? The ear consciousness, for example, it could perceive the various objects such as the blue, red, and in the different shapes. If it has awareness, then it definitely would be able to perceive all of those shapes and forms. But in this way, they are not the ear faculty anymore. To continue analyzing like such, you may hold the ear that hears. So you still, if you were to still say that you hear because of the ear faculty, but when there is no movement and stillness, there's no particle of movement and stillness in the object, then hearing cannot occur. How could you have any hearing, since there is no particle of movement and stillness? Because if it has nothing to do with the object, then how could you hear it? You would not be able to hear anything, since the hearing doesn't occur. Since the hearing doesn't occur, how then could the ear, which are but physical forms, unite with the external objects to be called the realm of consciousness? The ears are no other than just an organ, this piece of this part of you that is made of flesh. Some people have bigger ears and some have smaller ears. Recently, I attended a meeting in Chengdu, and someone apparently took a picture from behind. And then people, after seeing the photos, told me that they were able to recognize that it was me sitting there just simply by looking at the shape of my ears. Normally, we would say that people have bigger ears, have more merits, just like the Buddha has bigger ears. But that's just one very popular folk saying. Anyhow, we do need to use the ear faculty to listen. But if there is no sound, there's no particle of movement or stillness, then there would not be hearing at all, because the hearing cannot occur. How then could the ear, which are but physical forms, unite with external objects to be called the realm of consciousness? Our ears are no other than a piece of flesh. Some of them looks like a piece of leaf, and some probably looks like a type of bakery. The ear itself is a part of body. And the body is the subject that would receive the object of touch. So the ear, since it's part of the body, then it should be also mixed with the receiving of the object, which is the touch. In this way, it is very much mixed. How would the ear then receive the sound? If you hear the sound through your ear faculty, but your ear faculty is part of your body. And the ear, since it's a physical part of the body, then the object that it receives is touch. Then the consciousness that it should produce, it should be the consciousness of the body rather than the consciousness of the ear. Then once again, therefore, how would the realm of the ear consciousness be established? Since it's a part of your body consciousness, how could you say that it is, how could you establish the realm of ear consciousness? So over here it says that the ear is part of the body, and this is the body's object, the body being the subject, and then the object is touch. Well, the ear is connected to the body, then the ear should also receive the consciousness of the body, rather the object of touch, and then it becomes the consciousness of body and not the consciousness of ear. The Buddha is quite excellent, isn't he? Simply through the years, he would be able to elaborate so much to explain and delve into the very detailed analysis just through the ear faculty and ear consciousness. This is the first aspect of making the observation. Does it come from the ear faculty or does it come from the sound? Then the next aspect, suppose it was produced from sound. This part is a bit difficult to understand, so you should pay more attention, open up your ears. If the consciousness existed because of sound, then it would have no connection with hearing. Previously, we talked about how the consciousness through hearing were produced from the ear faculty, and over here is saying that if it were produced from the sound. It is to say that the consciousness exists because of sound. Then, in that way, it would have no connection with hearing. Then you don't need your ears. You don't need your ears to listen anymore, since the consciousness exists because of sound. Your body and your ear faculty, it really doesn't have any connection to consciousness anymore, to your hearing consciousness anymore. Without hearing, then the characteristic of sound would have no location. If you were to say that there is no hearing, or at the time of not hearing anything, in that way, there is no characteristic of sound, or the sound of characteristic would have no location at all. If you don't hear anything, where is the location? Where is the characteristic of the sound located? Deaf cannot hear sound. A deaf cannot hear, right? Cannot hear any sound. If the sound were to come from the outside, from the object, the sound consciousness and the sound doesn't have anything to do with you, because you can't hear it. In the Dharma Shrine Hall right now, if someone's giving a teaching, then we would be able to hear the sound, and then we would be able to recognize the characteristic of the sound. If the ear consciousness comes from the sound, then it has nothing to do with your ear faculty. If you can't hear it, then what is the characteristic of sound? So it doesn't have any location anywhere at all. But this doesn't happen at all. This is not the case. Suppose the consciousness existed because of sound. Also, suppose the ear consciousness existed because of the sound. Given that sound exists because of hearing, which causes the characteristic of sound to manifest. If you were to say that the sound, it comes from the sound, and you would hear first, and then there's the characteristic of sound. If you were to say that, then you should also hear the hearing consciousness. So after claiming that it comes from the sound, then you have to hear it, then there's the location of the sound. So your ear consciousness should also be able to hear the ear consciousness. Why is that? It is because the hearing comes from the sound, and your hearing definitely have consciousness, because without consciousness you will not be able to hear it. To be able to hear the sound, then you are saying that you're hearing the hearing consciousness. Without the consciousness being part of it, you will not be able to hear it. So at that moment, not only you hear the sound, you also hear the hearing consciousness. If you do not hear the hearing consciousness, then you will not be able to hear the sound, which can no longer be stated as the realm of sound anymore. If the hearing consciousness is not heard, then there is no realm out of the 18 realms. There is really there cannot be such kind of realm. If it is heard, then it is the same as sound, since you said that it comes from sound. If the consciousness itself is heard, our consciousness is supposed to be subject rather than object, but now you're saying that the consciousness itself is heard, therefore it also becomes the object. Who is it that perceives and hears the consciousness then? Now, the sound has also the consciousness that it is both hearing and to be heard. In that way, who is that perceives and hears the consciousness? If there is no perceiver, then in the end you would be like grass or wood. If you were to say that this hearing doesn't have consciousness, If you were to say that there is no perceiver, then you are basically saying that you are just like grass or wood, since there is no consciousness. It's a little bit confusing over here, but if you can follow the logic, it should be understandable. Our ear consciousness, if it comes from sound, then is there hearing? If you were to say that there is hearing, but my ear consciousness and ear faculty did not get involved in this, then you are simply saying that there is hearing inside sound, which means that there is consciousness within hearing and the sound. Because without consciousness, you will not be able to hear. If there is consciousness, then when we're listening, when we're hearing, we're not hearing the sound, we're hearing the consciousness, which means that the object becomes also the subject. The consciousness becomes the object. It is just like someone with the miraculous hearing capacity would be able to hear the ear consciousness. Not only he can hear his own ear consciousness, he can also hear others' ear consciousness through the sound. Do you understand it? Well, I think I understood it. I mainly understood it. I know it's a bit confusing, but this is the logical analysis. If you can look into it and study it further, you should be able to understand. If you really don't understand, then you can ask each other and try to get someone to help you out. Some people have rather really fast understanding, and then they will be able to understand it through once or twice. Some takes 3 tries and some takes 5 tries to understand. But then we have the after-class tutoring sessions, and then you can also ask the others. In the sutra, it says that nor is it like that the sound and hearing mix together to form a realm in between. Previously, we have already refuted that the consciousness comes from the ear faculty, and the second one is refutation that consciousness should come from the sound. The third one is coming from the mix together. Over here it says that the ear consciousness should not be a product with the combination of sound and hearing mixed together, since a realm in between could not be established. The ear consciousness, if you were to say that part of the consciousness receives a part of the object, that is the sound, and then a part, and it also works with the ear faculty. So a part of the consciousness also works with the ear faculty. But then what is this ear consciousness? After this observation, you would be able to understand that there is really no place for the realm to be in between. When we're searching for the ear consciousness by making such an observation, it is just like the observation in Madhyamika teachings. There is no self in object, there is no self in the mind, there is no self in the middle either. There is no self existed in between. But where is the self which could apply over here? Where is ear consciousness? We would not be able to find it either. In this way, the ear consciousness cannot be established from the mixture of the faculty and the object. This is to refute the existence of in-between or with a combination. And then it says that, therefore, you should know that as to the ear and sound creating the conditions which produce this realm of the ear consciousness, none of the 3 places exists. Thus, the ear, sound, and the sound consciousness, these 3 do not have their origin in cause and conditions, nor do their natures arise spontaneously. So the realm of sound, according to the realm of the ear, sound, and sound consciousness, or sound realm over here, according to the Buddhist logic, it is, we would say that the ear faculty and the sound and the ear consciousness, sometimes we would also say the sound realm, which is equivalent to consciousness. So these three do not have their origin in causes and conditions, nor do their natures arise spontaneously. Rather, the manifestation of such is just a wondrous function of Buddha nature. The sound, we're listening to sounds at all times. Some of our fellow Sangha members listening to all kinds of sounds all the way from beginning to the evening. But today, in the Surangama Sutra, it says that there is nothing that we can hear, and there is nothing in our ear faculty, and there is no sound in the sound. There is no ear consciousness. You can contemplate upon that. The ear consciousness, the sound, and the ear faculty cannot be obtained. Through these kinds of analysis, we would be able to understand that nothing truly exists in absolute truth. After understanding it thoroughly, then we would be able to explain it to the worldly philosophers and the theorists, and we can make analysis to them. And we would be able to ask questions and saying that where does the ear come from? Does it come from the sound? Does it come from your ear faculty, or does it come from your ear consciousness? After making such analysis, they would have to come to the same conclusion. And since I believe no one could surpass the wisdom of the world-honored one. That was the ear consciousness. Let's look at the nose consciousness. Moreover, Ananda, as you understand it, the nose and smells create the conditions that produce the nose consciousness. Ananda stopped talking all at once. Ananda is very quiet, and it's a little bit difficult to adjust to him being completely quiet. He kept on talking at the beginning, but now he's not responding to the Buddha. But the Buddha kept on addressing him, saying that Ananda, he's definitely there, but he's not really speaking something. The Buddha over here says that, moreover, Ananda, as you understand it, the nose and smells create the conditions that produce the nose consciousness. Is it that by the nose, the faculty and the smell, so those as conditions which could produce the nose consciousness? Is it consciousness produced because is the consciousness produced because of the nose, such that the nose is its realm, or is it produced because of smells, such that the smells are its realm? Usually we would say the nose consciousness, but we don't say smell consciousness, right? Do you remember why it is not the smell consciousness, rather why it says it's the nose consciousness but not the smell consciousness? Is it? Do you remember? According to the treasury of valid cognition or Abhidharma. Do you remember why? No, you don't remember?
为什么呢？不公义肯定是啊。那禁也是不公义呢。不是增上也是，但是。
It is definitely the not shared causes, but I can't quite remember because it's been 20 years since I last studied Abhidharma. Maybe next lifetime I will study Abhidharma again. Abhidharma sometimes it could be very useful. I should have memorized Abhidharma. That would be better. Next time, in the next class, if some of you are really proficient in Abhidharma, then you can come closer, sit closer to me. If you can answer my questions at all times. Over here, the Buddha asked, does the smell consciousness come from the nose, or is it produced through the smells? Suppose, Ananda, that the nose consciousness were produced because of the nose. The nose consciousness is the one that knows that incense smells good, and then when you go to the toilet, you know that it's stench over there. So that's the consciousness. And then over here, the Buddha asked, well, the smell object, in the Chinese character, smell is the same character to fragrance. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to differentiate the two, whether this is a smell, whether it means smell or fragrance. But over here, what it means is smell. The Buddha over here asked, well, if you think it is a production, if the consciousness is a production of your nose faculty, then you need to tell me what your nose faculty is. So what do you take to be the nose? Do you hold that it takes the form of two fleshy claws, or do you hold it as an inherent ability of the nature which perceives smells as a result of movement? The two claws or the two sides of the nose, of the nostrils. In the sutra, it says it's two claws, but it's the two sides of the nostrils. But nose is no other than this dough-shaped, made of this dough-shaped and fleshy object. Now the Buddha asked, where does it come from? Does it come from this flesh, or does it come from the two claws, which are the wings of the nose? Where does it come from? Over here, if the person were to say that the consciousness comes from the nose faculty, does it come from the flesh, or does it come from the awareness? The awareness refers to the consciousness. Suppose you hold that it is a fleshy claws, the wings of the nose, which form an integral part of your body. Since the body's perception is touch, the sense organ of smelling would be named the body instead of the nose. The nose claw, the fleshy claws, or the wings of the nose, whatever it is called, this nose that we have. Someone may have a smaller nose and some may have a big nose. Whatever big or small nose, if it were whatever kind of shape it is, big or small, and whatever shape it is still part of your body. And the fleshy part, since it is body, and then the body's awareness is touch, in this way it should be named as body rather than the nose. So the name should be so the object that is perceived by body is touch. It is no longer smell. We can see that the logic of the Buddha sometimes goes here and sometimes goes there. It's very hard to hold on to it. According to the Abhidharma, the nose faculty is divided into the two types of faculty. The tongue faculty is like a half moon, and the eyes are like a type of flower. And for the nose faculty, what's the description? A brass tube? There are different shapes. That's described in Abhidharma. I really can't remember too much of the teachings from Abhidharma. Initially, I wanted to translate the great commentary of Abhidharma, but it seems that life is too short to do that. Anyhow, when it comes to the nose, if you were to say if you were to point to the fleshy part, then the fleshy part is the part of body. Then the nose should be considered as part of the faculty of the body rather than the faculty of the nose. If you were to say that out of the faculty of the body there is the production of the consciousness of nose, that is not reasonable. The sense organ of smelling would be named a body. Over here in the sutra it says that since the body's perception is touch instead of nose, and the objects of smelling would be object of touch, since it would not even have the name nose, how could a realm be established for it? If you could not find the nose consciousness, if you cannot find the nose faculty there, how could you find the... If you can't even find the name of the nose faculty, how would you be able to find the consciousness that is the nose consciousness? Therefore, this is not reasonable. Now, the next one is also unreasonable. How so? Over here it says that suppose you held the nose. Suppose you held that the nose was a perceiver of smells. Then in your mind, what is it that perceives? If you think the smell is knowing, then in your mind, what is the smelling in your nose? To further analyze it, it is divided into three parts again. Suppose it were the flesh that perceives the flesh, because the nose is made by the flesh, right? Basically, what the flesh perceives is object of touch, which has nothing to do with the nose. This analysis is the same as the previous one, because nose is part of flesh, and then the flesh is part of the body. Therefore, the perceived object is touch instead of smelling. So the object that is perceived is touch. How could the consciousness be the nose consciousness? That is not reasonable. Now, the second aspect is that suppose it were emptiness that perceived, some air that enters into your nose that you can feel. So what about if it's emptiness? This is not reasonable either. How so? Then emptiness would itself be the perceiver. The emptiness would be self-aware, and the flesh would have no awareness. So the emptiness would know. The emptiness would be able to smell, but your flesh would not have any feelings, any sensations or awareness. Thus, emptiness space would be you, and since your body would be without perception, Ananda would not exist. On top of that, if emptiness knows, then your body would not know, because emptiness would be Ananda. In this way, Ananda would not exist, because Ananda would be empty, right? Your nose shouldn't have any awareness. Your body doesn't have any awareness, and emptiness is aware. So, in this way, Ananda. Can you or can you not smell this smell? If you were to say that you can smell, you can smell the fragrance or that particular sense, then you're saying that you're smelling, and you're saying that you smell with emptiness, then you become emptiness, because your body would be without awareness, rather the emptiness would be aware, and you Ananda would be emptiness. You would be there, you would become space. So obviously that is not true. Ananda, by relying on your nose faculty, you already smelled the sense. So what you're saying over here is contradictory to each other. Previously, we've already covered of knowing the sense of smell through nose, which doesn't work because that is knowing through the body. And then the second one is through emptiness, which is not reasonable. The next one is talking about through the sense, the fragrance or stench. In the sutra, it says that if it is the smell that perceives perception itself would lie with the smell, what would that have to do with you? If the smell is if the smell that perceives the perception itself, then what does that have to do with you, Ananda, since it knows itself? If it is certain that vapors of fragrance and stench are produced from your nose, then the two flowing vapors of fragrance and stench would not arise from the wood of Arivana or Chandana. Whatever kinds of stench or smell, or a good fragrant smell, Ananda, you will be able to know that, because if you think that the vapors of fragrance or stench are produced from your nose, in this way, let it be fragrant or stench. Those smells are not produced through the fragrant wood such as chandana or the stench from Aravana. The Aravana plant is a plant that produces stench smell. Though it looks really beautiful, it even produces beautiful red blossoms. But once you taste it or eat it, it is extremely poisonous. On top of that, it has a great stench. People would be able to smell that stench for 40 yojanas, about 40 yojanas away. But a chandana is this beautiful sandalwood that produces beautiful scent, a very fragrant scent. It is said that the Malaya chandana is the best fragrance. It says that if you were to think that the vapors of fragrance or stench comes from, it is no other than a product from your nose, then the Aravana or Chandana would not produce any of the other smells, let it be good or bad. Given that the smell does not come from these two things, when you smell your own nose, is it fragrant or does it stink? It should, your nose then should have a character or of either fragrant or stench. If it carries the character of stench, then you will never be able to smell fragrance. If it carries the characteristic, it will not be able to smell stink at any time. So the Buddha said that when you smell your own nose, is it fragrant or does it stink? What stinks does not give off fragrances. What is fragrant does not stink. One person can only have one nose consciousness. If it is of two nose consciousness, then that would make one person into two consciousness, into two persons. Suppose you say you can smell both the fragrance and the stench, then you, one person, would have two noses, two nose consciousnesses, which means two people. I would now be addressing question to two Ananda, which one is you?
把它变成就是两个阿难。
Ananda
现在阿难什么都不敢说。
Ananda at this point doesn't really want to say anything because the Buddha at first turned Ananda into space, and now through debate, the Buddha said that, "Are you now? Have you now become two Anandas?" Do you understand this analysis, this particular logic by now? Over here, he said that suppose you know that through the smell, but smell is the object. If the smell, which has two possibilities, let it be fragrant or stink. If there's the two solidly existent character attached to the smell, let it be either stench or fragrance. At the time of being perceived by the nose consciousness, it could either be fragrant or stench. If it changes from one time to another, then it is not truly existent. So that's the problem over here. And then the Buddha continued to say that suppose there is one nose, the fragrance and the stench would not be two. If nose consciousness is one consciousness, but fragrance and stench would not be two. In this way, since stench would be fragrance and fragrance would become stench, there would not be two natures. Thus, what would make up the realm? Over here in the Chinese translation, the fragrance is the same word with smell. So you need to look carefully at that word, whether it means fragrance or smell. Now we've already covered the three aspects. The first one is through the flesh, second one through emptiness, and third one through smell. These three can be understood as the three outlines. If the nose consciousness were produced because of smell, it follows that it is in existence just because of smells. If nose consciousness need to rely on the smell to be produced or to exist, if we do not need the faculty, rather we only need to rely on the smell, let it be the fragrant incense or the stench feces, whatever kinds of particle of smell there is. It could be stench or fragrance. Again, over here, the Chinese language is kind of confusing because of the two words are so similar. The two words are exactly the same, rather. It's just the way that is used sometimes it differentiates. But in the Tibetan language, it is not stated this way. Anyhow, over here, the Buddha says that if you were to say that nose consciousness rely on the particle of the smell to be produced, then the Buddha gives an example, said that just as the eyes can see but are unable to see themselves, eyes have the property of seeing, but eyes cannot see the eyes themselves. So too, when it comes to the nose consciousness, if it exists because of smells, it would not be aware of smells. If you were to say that the nose consciousness is produced by smell, your nose consciousness, by relying on the smell, it should not know smell either, because just like how the eyes could see the object or the other people or the other things, but it cannot see itself. For the same reason, the smell consciousness would not be able to know the smell. So how could a nose consciousness does not know smell? That would no longer be a nose consciousness, and that is not possible. If it is aware of smells, then it is not produced from smells. So if you're aware of the smells, since it is reliant on the smells to be produced, and at that time, if it is aware of the smells, then it is not produced from smells. It is not relying on smells. Does this nose consciousness aware of the smells? If it is aware of the smells, then it is not produced from smells because smells would be the object. If it had no awareness, the realm of smelling would not come into being. If you were to say that there is awareness to the smell, that is not possible. How would you be able to say that the smell, which is the particles or the objects, as an object, the smells could not have awareness. It's just the sound. The sound doesn't have consciousness, or the forms doesn't have consciousness. It's the same thing. It doesn't have awareness. It's for the same reason. If the consciousness were not aware of smells, then the realm would not be established from smells. If you were to say that the nose consciousness cannot be aware of the smell, let it be good smell or bad smell. If the nose consciousness cannot discern it, then how could you establish realms? The nose consciousness, if it is without the ability to discern the various smells, to be aware of the smells, then how could you establish the realms? That is not reasonable. And then the last one is on the mixture. Let it be the mixture of the faculty and the object. Since there is no intermediate realm of consciousness, there is no basis for establishing anything internal or external. Therefore, the nature of smelling is ultimately empty and false. There is nothing that is in between. There is nothing that is inside or outside. For that reason, the nature of smelling is ultimately empty and false. We use the faculty of nose to smell the object is simply empty and false. It is simply manifested in such a way like a dream and like an illusion. When we truly make the observation, it is false and empty. And then as the conclusion or the summary says, therefore you should know that as to the nose and the smells, being the condition which produce the realm of the nose consciousness, none of the three places exists. Indeed, when we make the observation from the three aspects, let it be from the nose faculty, from the object, and from the object which is the particles, or from the consciousness level, we would not be able to obtain anything that is truly existent, just like the sun or the children of the barren woman or the flowers in the sky. That is exactly the same. In this way, thus the nose smells and the realm of smelling, these three do not have their origins in causing conditions, nor do their nature arise spontaneously. We will stop here today.
Nam de yi tam chi ge zi ba nye le ni ba za na ba xie jiang jie ga na jie wa lo zhe ba ye zhe ben zong len zhong wa